The candles in Hall of Ascension burned with a trembling, unnatural stillness, as though the flames themselves were afraid to move. The entire Dawn Empire had gathered to witness the coronation of Aurelia Valenhart. 20 years old, poised, ethereal, and wrapped in serenity so flawless that only the most perceptive noticed the darkness glinting behind her eyes. The attendants described her as a vision carved from moonlight. Pale silk robes embroidered with gold thread, jewels gleaming like captured stars, dark hair cascading down her back in heavy waves. But the truth lay not in her beauty, though even her critics whispered that she was unnaturally captivating, but in the way she watched everyone watching her. The nobles bowed, the generals knelt, the priests chanted prayers older than the empire. Aurelia smiled at them all, but not with gratitude, with possession. Her gaze passed over them like a blade, gently testing the softness of flesh. She did not blink. She absorbed, calculated, measured, and behind her gentle expression lived a hunger so subtle that only a few noticed. And every one of those few did their best to forget. When the grand oracle lowered a crown of opals and firestones onto Aurelia's head, the assembled crowd erupted into a roar of devotion. But Aurelia didn't hear their praise. She heard something else. A single whimper, so faint no one else would have recognized it. Curling to the back of her mind, a child's cry, a memory, a reminder. Pain, she thought, was the first truth she had ever learned. She breathed in deeply, and for a moment her lips parted in a fleeting expression of pleasure, so brief, so fragile, that the court assumed it was emotion. It was not. It was appetite. Then her voice rose, soft yet commanding, like velvet pulled over steel. "My people," she said, "I accept the crown not as a burden, but as a promise that the Dawn Empire shall know peace again." The crowd cheered. Aurelia smiled sweetly. Peace? They had no idea what kind of peace she intended. The ceremony ended with music, wine, and the release of white doves. Nobles danced beneath gold lanterns, unaware that a new era had begun, not of healing, but of exquisite darkness. Later that night, Aurelia dismissed her attendants with gentle words and an angelic smile. They left the chamber believing their Empress was retiring to rest. Only one remained behind. Cassian Vale, the newly appointed Master of Whisperers. 24, brilliant, devoted, and hopelessly loyal to the woman standing before him. "You summoned me, your radiance?" he asked. Aurelia approached him slowly, her footsteps soundless over the marble floor. When she reached him, she lifted her hand, not to touch his cheek, as he expected, but to trace the line of his throat with the back of her finger. His breath hitched. Aurelia smiled. "You are my most trusted servant," she murmured. "You see what others do not. So tell me, Cassian." Her gaze sharpened like the point of a dagger. "What do you think lies beneath this palace?" Cassian swallowed. "Old foundations? The servant tunnels? Storage vaults?" "Wrong," Aurelia whispered, leaning close enough that her breath brushed his ear. "What lies beneath is truth." "Truth, your radiance?" "Yes, truth that the Empire once embraced and then buried. Truth that kings feared. Truth that no emperor before me had the will to use." Cassian frowned, confused, and yet drawn in by the gleam in her eyes. Aurelia stepped away and glided toward a massive tapestry of the Dawn Goddess. With one graceful movement, she slid it aside. Behind it lay a narrow door of blackened iron. Cassian stiffened. "Your radiance, what is this?" "The first place I visited as a child," she whispered, "and the last place my father ever wanted me to discover." Her hand slid across the cold metal. The lock clicked with a sound that echoed like a heartbeat between them. Cassian tried to speak, but the words died on his tongue. Aurelia looked back at him, her expression serene. And yet there was something inside her eyes, something shining and sharp, something that belonged more to a predator than to a sovereign. "Come," she said softly. "It is time you understood how I truly intend to rule." The door swung open. Darkness breathed from the depths below. Cassian hesitated. Aurelia extended her hand. And even though something deep in his soul begged him to run, he followed, because some people are captured by beauty, some by power. Cassian was captured by both. The iron door shut behind them with the slow, heavy certainty of a tomb sealing itself. And as Aurelia descended the spiral staircase, the faintest smile touched her lips, a smile that hinted at everything she had hidden behind the perfect mask worn above. Because beneath the throne room of the Dawn Empire, behind velvet and marble and light, a secret chamber waited, a place built not for ruling, but for pleasure, not for a pleasure most could imagine, but for the kind only an empress like Aurelia would dare to crave. As her footsteps echoed deeper into the dark, she whispered to herself, "At last!" The staircase spiraled downward for so long Cassian lost all sense of time. The air grew colder, denser, older. It carried a strange smell, a blend of dust, iron, and something faintly sweet, like perfumed oil left to rot. Every step seemed to echo into a space far larger than the staircase should have led to. Aurelia walked ahead of him, her hand gliding along the stone wall, as if she had traced this path 1,000 times. Her posture remained perfect, her shoulders relaxed, her breathing calm, her steps unhesitating. Cassian wondered how many nights she had descended into the palace's forbidden belly, long before she ever wore the crown. Finally, the staircase emptied into a long corridor lit by tall glass lanterns. The flames flickered behind tinted crimson glass, giving the illusion that blood pulsed inside them rather than fire. Cassian shivered involuntarily. Aurelia did not. If anything, her smile widened. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "Feel what, your radiance?" She turned to him, and her voice lowered into a whisper that felt like silk wrapped around a knife. "The truth." She moved forward, her gown trailing behind her like liquid moonlight flowing across stone. Cassian followed, his heartbeat thundering against his ribs. He noticed markings carved into the walls, ancient symbols from an era so old most scholars refused to acknowledge it existed. He recognized one, a serpent coiled around a flame. Aurelia paused beside it, running her fingers along the carved lines. "My father tried to hide these symbols," she murmured. "He had the walls scraped, the murals burned, the text banned. But he never understood one thing." "What is that?" Cassian asked. "That history does not die just because someone orders it to." She faced him fully now, her eyes gleaming. "It waits. Beneath the surface. Beneath the lies. Beneath us." A chill ran up his spine. The corridor ended at 2 towering doors of black lacquered wood. Aurelia placed both hands against them. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the doors inhaled. Not opened. Inhaled, as though the entire chamber beyond them were alive and hungry. Aurelia stepped inside without fear. Cassian followed because he could not bring himself to do otherwise. The door shut behind them, and the velvet cellar revealed itself. The chamber was impossibly vast, a circular room lined with velvet, so deep red it looked like fresh-washed flesh. Torches cast shadows that writhed like living creatures across the walls. The scent of oils, incense, and iron hung thick in the air, and in the center stood a long reclining chair carved from obsidian dark wood, polished to a mirror sheen. Satin restraints hung loosely from its arms and legs, their silk shining under the torchlight. Cassian's mouth had gone dry. Aurelia walked toward the chair with reverence. "When I was 7 years old," she said softly, "I found this chamber." Cassian's heart lurched. "7? Your radiance." "My father tried to block the entrance, tried to erase it. But children," a soft laugh escaped her, a sound too beautiful for the chill it carried. "Children are experts at finding the things their parents fear." She trailed her hand along the chair's surface. "This," she whispered, "was where the first emperors ruled from, not from the throne above. Here, beneath the world." Cassian tried to steady his voice. "Ruled how?" Aurelia turned to him, her eyes shimmering with a hunger he had only glimpsed once before, during her coronation, when she felt the world surrender to her. "Through understanding what drives the human heart. Fear, pleasure, pain." Her voice softened to a murmur. "All 3 threads lead to obedience. But only one leads to devotion." Cassian swallowed hard. "And which one is that?" Aurelia stepped closer, so close he felt her breath warm the hollow of his throat. "Pain given by the one you adore." He froze. "Aurelia." She touched his cheek gently, almost lovingly. "Cassian, look around you. This chamber was not built for punishment. It was built for worship. Those who entered offered their bodies, their fear, their trembling devotion. She leaned closer, her lips grazing the edge of his ear. This chamber is where an emperor becomes a god. Cashin's pulse hammered, and yet he could not deny the part of himself that leaned toward her touch. Aurelia smiled knowingly. She moved away, lifting a long, silk-draped object from a velvet-covered table. When she pulled the cloth away, Cashin saw an instrument carved of gold and bone, intricate and horrifyingly elegant. He took an involuntary step back. Aurelia's smile did not fade. "Stay where you are." The command was soft, deadly, impossible to resist. Cashin's breath caught. Aurelia approached him again, the instrument glinting in her hand. "You fear me," she whispered, "and you should—" Her other hand cupped his jaw, her thumb brushing his lower lip. "But what you feel is more than fear, Cashin, isn't it?" His voice broke. "Your radiance—" "Yes," she breathed. "Your voice betrays you. Your pulse betrays you. Your devotion betrays you." She tilted her head, studying him the way a musician studies an instrument before playing its first note. "But I did not bring you here tonight to use you." Her eyes darkened with something like promise. "Tonight, you are here to witness." "Witness what?" he managed. Aurelia smiled, a smile so beautiful it felt like a violation. "The first offering of my reign." When the side doors creaked open, 2 masked attendants entered, dragging someone between them. A young noblewoman, gagged, bound, shaking. Cashin recognized her face, and his blood ran cold. Suddenly he understood exactly what kind of Empress Aurelia intended to be, the kind the Empire would spend centuries trying to erase. And as Aurelia turned back toward the obsidian chair, torchlight flickering over the hunger blooming in her eyes, Cashin knew this was only the beginning. The moment the Empress stepped into her private garden, Cassia realized why the palace guards whispered about it as though it were cursed. Nothing should have been so beautiful in a place rumored to swallow screams, yet that was exactly what made it terrifying. It was a sanctuary of roses nurtured by a woman who treated suffering like a luxury. The path wound between marble statues, each so expertly carved they felt almost alive, their faces frozen in expressions too complex to be mere artistic inspiration. All mixed with dread as Cassia followed several paces behind, carrying the tray of warm spice wine the Empress had requested. Morning sunlight glistened off dew-soaked petals, creating small prisms of light across the grass. Birds chirped. Fountains murmured. Everything looked idyllic, impossibly so, as if no misery could ever enter this place. Yet everyone in the palace knew this was where the Empress preferred to entertain those who disappointed her. Not in dungeons, not in cells. Here, in her perfect paradise. "Walk slower," the Empress murmured without turning. "You step like someone afraid of breaking something, or someone afraid of being heard." Cassia steadied her breath. "Forgive me, your radiance. I was only trying to keep pace." "Then keep my pace," she replied, voice velvet soft and unmistakably commanding. Cassia adjusted, neither too fast nor too cautious now. She had learned quickly that the Empress despised extremes. The timid were weak, the bold, insolent. Moderation was survival. They reached a shaded alcove where a marble bench curved beneath a blooming bower of deep crimson flowers. The Empress sat with a grace that made the surrounding world seem clumsy. Cassia placed a tray before her and stepped back. "You carry yourself better than yesterday," the Empress said, lifting the cup to her lips. "Most newcomers tremble. You hide it well." "Thank you, your radiance. But you still wonder about this place," the Empress said, her eyes drifting toward the statues. "I can hear the questions in your silence." Cassia tried not to follow her gaze, but it was impossible. The statues were too lifelike, too emotional. Their expressions not of peace or glory, but something like longing, regret, or terror. "May I speak honestly?" Cassia asked, risking the question. The Empress smiled faintly, the kind of smile that made people unsure whether she was pleased or amused by their impending misery. "You may," she allowed. "The statues, their faces feel strange, as though they were modeled after someone real." "Oh, they were," the Empress said, Everything in this garden was created from life. Cash's heart skipped. From life? The Empress didn't answer immediately. Instead, she rose and began walking toward a tall figure at the edge of the clearing. A statue of a young man kneeling, head bowed, hands pressed to his chest as though begging. This one begged, she said, but not in words. His betrayal was silent, so his plea remained the same. Cassia felt her throat tighten. The Empress ran her fingers along the stone cheek. Tender as a lover, he served in my personal guard. Trusted, loyal, or so I believed, until he wasn't. Cassia swallowed. What happened to him? The Empress looked over her shoulder, eyes glinting. He returned to the earth, as all things do. But his fear? His regret? Those I preserved. Cassia felt cold despite the warmth of the morning. The Empress moved to another statue, this one of a woman with her hands clasped over her heart, face contorted in shock. And she, the Empress said, touching the sculpture's fingers, was a lady-in-waiting who dared to deliver someone else's message before mine. A small disobedience. But small disobedience grows, like rot under marble. Cassia forced her voice steady. Your radiance, what became of her body? The Empress turned fully now, approaching Cassia with slow, measured grace. You think I killed them, don't you? She tilted her head. That I sculpted their likeness after disposing of their flesh. Cassia said nothing. She didn't trust the truth to stay inside her mouth if she opened it. The Empress stopped just inches from her. I have never destroyed anything that belonged to me, she murmured. I transform it. Then she lifted her hand and brushed Cassia's cheek. Featherlight, but cold enough to make her bones stiffen. You fear this garden, she whispered. Good. Fear is honest. Loyalty can be faked. Admiration can be forced. But fear? It reveals what you truly are. Cassia forced herself not to flinch. And what am I, your radiance? Someone who will either rise or be reshaped. She gestured around. When I look at you, I do not yet see stone. I see clay, malleable, promising, full of potential. Cassia breathed carefully. I want only to serve well. Then let me give you a lesson. A privilege, really. Few are invited to learn how I keep order. Cassia immediately regretted her words. The Empress's voice slipped into a soft, almost delighted tone. Fetch the key from the ivy-covered arch. The silver one. Cassia hesitated. Something in the Empress's expression told her she shouldn't ask why, that doing so might make the garden choose her as its next ornament. She crossed the grass to the arch where thick ivy climbed in coils. Beneath the leaves hung several keys, all different metals and designs. The silver one gleamed brightest. As she reached for it, she felt a draft, faint but unnaturally cold, seeping from the stone wall. A hidden door. Cassia returned and offered the key. The Empress took it, but instead of going to the door, she turned back toward the bench and sat again. Open it, she said mildly. Cassia stood stiff. Me? Of course. You must see. Cassia approached the arch again, but her legs felt hewn from marble. She pressed the key to the nearly invisible seam in the wall. It clicked with a sound too sharp for something so old. The door cracked open. A breath of frigid air exhaled outward, carrying a faint metallic scent. Not blood, exactly, but something close enough to make her instincts recoil. Step inside. The Empress called softly. Cassia took one step over the threshold, then another, and the door swung fully open. Behind her, the Empress's voice floated through the shadowed entry. Welcome, Cassia, to the place where I turned disobedience into beauty. Cassia's heart hammered as she descended into the dim chamber, where shapes hung suspended from the ceiling, some draped in cloth, others covered in wax-like layers that glimmered under a row of flickering lamps. The Empress followed her inside at last, closing the door with a gentle click. Cassia realized then that the garden above was only the beginning, a curated illusion. This place, this hidden chamber, this was the truth. A truth she was now part of. Part 4, the chamber where truth was stripped bare. Hook already woven naturally into the opening, not separated. Cassia had imagined many versions of what the Empress's secret chamber might contain, but none of them matched the cold and deliberate cruelty woven into the room's design. It wasn't the gore of a dungeon nor the filth of a prison. That was what made it worse. Everything here was immaculate, intentional, sanitized in a way that suggested suffering wasn't an accident brutality, but an art form, a philosophy the Empress practiced with meticulous devotion. Lamps burned in recessed niches along the walls, casting a steady amber light that left no shadows large enough to hide in. Suspended from the ceiling were forms draped in heavy linen coverings, the silhouettes of bodies or mannequins, or something between the two. A faint scent of wax and resin clung to the air. Cassius stood frozen at the threshold. The Empress walked past her with the confidence of someone entering a private sanctuary. "Do not be afraid," she said softly. "Fear makes the mind clumsy, and I want you sharp." Cassius could barely breathe. "Your Radiance, what is this place?" "The workshop," the Empress answered, her voice serene, "where I correct what the world twists, where I break patterns before they grow into threats." Cassius' gaze darted toward the linen-covered shapes. "Are those artifacts?" The Empress interrupted before the question left her lips. "Representations of those who failed to understand their place. Their likeness remains here as a reminder, nothing more." Cassius wasn't sure if she believed her. The forms were too realistic, too anatomically precise. But the Empress's tone was calm, almost soothing, and Cassius dared not challenge it. The Empress gestured for her to approach a large stone table in the center of the chamber. Its surface was clean, polished, edged with delicate engravings of vines and birds. "Beautiful. Horrifying. Come closer," the Empress murmured. Cassius stepped forward one small, careful movement at a time. "This table," the Empress said, caressing its edge, "was my father's, a philosopher king, a man who believed that souls must be examined with the same discipline as the body." Cassius blinked. The Empress never spoke of her father, ever. "He taught me that pain reveals truth." She smiled faintly, but he lacked delicacy. He was crude, loud. He believed in breaking people open to see what spilled out. "And you?" Cassius asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I prefer silence," the Empress said. "Quiet methods. Measured. Elegant." Cassius felt the room tighten around her. The Empress moved to one of the covered shapes and pulled back the linen just enough to reveal a carved arm, marble, polished, impossibly lifelike. Its fingers were curled, as though reaching for something it would never touch again. "Every person who enters my service makes a choice," the Empress said, "to rise or to be preserved." Cassius' blood chilled. "You think I harm indiscriminately," the Empress continued, "that I am driven by indulgence or perversity. But cruelty is a tool, not a hunger. Everything I do has purpose." Cassius steadied her breathing. "What purpose do I serve, your Radiance?" The Empress turned, regarding her with a gaze so deep it felt like falling into a lake with no bottom. "You," she said, "are here to learn." Cassius' stomach tightened. "Learn what?" "How to keep order," the Empress replied. "How to recognize threat. How to identify disloyalty before it blooms. You have intuition. You notice things others try to hide." Her lips curved. "It is a rare gift." Cassius swallowed. "I didn't know you noticed me noticing." The Empress laughed softly, a sound beautiful and chilling in equal measure. "I notice everything." She walked back toward the stone table and rested her palm on its center. "This chamber," she said, "teaches clarity. When someone lies to me, they come here. When they plot against me, they come here. When they pretend obedience, they come here." She looked at Cassius. "But you? I brought you here for another reason entirely." Cassius felt her pulse race. "Why?" "To see whether you can handle truth," the Empress said. "Not the kind written in scrolls or whispered in halls. The kind revealed when a mask slips." She leaned closer, her voice barely above breath. "Every empire has two rulers, the one the people see and the one the powerful fear." Cassius held her gaze. "And which one are you?" The Empress's smile deepened. "Both." She moved to a cabinet built into the wall and opened it. Inside were neatly arranged tools. Nothing grotesque, nothing stained, nothing resembling instruments of torture. They were precision implements. Clamps, engravers, small hammers, brushes, mirrors. Tools an artist might use. "People think cruelty is something wild," The Empress said, "But real cruelty is disciplined, predictable, controlled." She picked up a slender metal stylus. Cassius stepped back instinctively. The Empress raised a hand. "Relax. You are not here to be harmed." "Then why bring me here?" Cassius whispered. "To show you the part of me the world is terrified of," the Empress said. "Because I want to see if you recoil or if you understand." Cassius' heart pounded. "Understand what?" "That loyalty is not built on kindness," the Empress said. "It is built on consequence. And this room ensures those consequences are remembered." She set the stylus down gently. "Cassius, look at me." Cassius forced herself to lift her eyes. "You will rise high in my service," the Empress said. "I can feel it. But if you wish to stand beside me, you must see and accept all parts of what I am, not just a queen wrapped in silk, but the ruler who keeps the empire from tearing itself apart." Cassius nodded slowly. "And if I cannot accept it?" The Empress stepped close enough that Cassius felt her breath. "Then you will remain innocent," she whispered. "But innocence has a short life here." Cassius felt the truth settle over her like cold water. The Empress was not asking for obedience. She was asking for alignment, for understanding, for complicity. The Empress tilted her head, studying her expression. "Now tell me," she said softly, "when you look around this chamber, do you see horror?" Cassius exhaled slowly. "I see power," she said. Something flickered in the Empress's eyes. Approval, satisfaction, a spark of triumph. "Good," she murmured. "Then you are ready for the next lesson." Cassius felt the room shift again, not physically, but in meaning. She was no longer simply a servant in a forbidden place. She was being invited deeper, deeper into the truth, deeper into the Empress's confidence, deeper into danger. Night in the palace always carried a breath of danger, but this night felt different, charged, anticipatory, as if the walls themselves were waiting to witness something. Cassius sensed at the moment she stepped into the Empress's private quarters. The air was too still, the silence too deliberate, and the Empress's gaze too sharp, like a predator studying whether its prey would run or kneel. The Empress dismissed the guards with a simple motion of her hand. The heavy doors closed behind them. Cassius felt suddenly very small in a vast, dimly lit chamber draped in velvet and gold. "You've seen the workshop," the Empress said, circling slowly behind her. "You've glimpsed the truth beneath the Empire's skin. But knowledge means nothing without proof." Cassius stood with her hands clasped in front of her. "I will do whatever you command." "Will you?" The Empress's breath touched the back of her neck. Obedience is easy to promise in daylight, but loyalty, true loyalty, must be tested in darkness. Cassius resisted the urge to shiver. The Empress stepped in front of her again, moving like a whisper of silk. "Tonight, you will prove that you understand what I showed you. Because watching cruelty is simple. Accepting it is harder. But participating," she let the word linger like a blade, "that is where most fall." Cassius' throat tightened. "What must I do?" The Empress smiled, slow and deliberate. "Come." She led Cassius past a series of hanging curtains into a narrow hallway lit by a single line of lanterns. Each flame flickered in a protective glass sphere, making the shadows dance across the floor. They reached a small iron-bound door. The Empress unlocked it with a key Cassius had never seen. Inside was a circular room, bare stone walls, a drain in the center, and a single chair chained to the floor. A prisoner sat in it, a young man, clothed in rags, eyes swollen with weeping. A bruise spread across his cheek, like spilled ink. Cassius froze. The Empress stepped forward. "This," she said, "is Lucien, a kitchen attendant. He stole from my private stores." She tilted her head. "Do you know what he stole, Cassius?" Cassius shook her head. "A pair." Cassius blinked. "A pair." The Empress's voice hardened. "Do you know how many betrayals begin small? A stolen coin becomes a stolen pouch. A stolen pouch becomes a bribe. A bribe becomes treason." She lifted her chin. "Those who cross boundaries without consequence only cross bigger ones." Lucien whimpered softly. "Please, I was hungry. I didn't mean." The Empress's finger touched his lips. Silence. Instant obedience. Then she turned to Cassius. You spent 2 days observing the garden and the workshop. You told me you understood what you saw. Now I will learn whether your understanding is real or only words." Cassia felt heat rising in her chest. "What do you want from me?" "A judgment," the Empress said. Cassia blinked. "A judgment?" "Yes." The Empress gestured to the trembling boy. "He stole. He lied. He broke my rule. You were brought here to learn how to keep order. So choose. Does he leave this room whole or broken?" Lucen strained against the ropes. Please don't let her." Cassia didn't look at him. She couldn't. She focused only on the Empress. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because," the Empress said, stepping closer, "I want to know what you truly are. A loyal servant? A frightened girl? Or something more?" Her voice softened dangerously. "And because if you stand beside me one day, your decisions will shape the Empire. Tonight is only the beginning." Cassia's pulse hammered in her ears. "If I say he should go free, what happens?" "Then he goes free," the Empress said simply. "And if I say he shouldn't, then he won't." The Empress offered no hint, no guidance, no warning. Cassia felt cornered by her own thoughts. She forced her breathing steady. "Your radiance," she said, choosing her words carefully. "If I let him go, would that be seen as weakness?" The Empress smiled. "Ah, you're already thinking like I hoped. But I won't answer. The world will not answer when you rule. It will simply respond." Cassia closed her eyes for a moment. In them, she saw the statues in the garden, the wax-coated forms in the workshop, the Empress's hands, so gentle, so lethal, and the quiet pride she had shown when Cassia said she saw power here, not horror. Cassia opened her eyes. "I choose to punish him," she said quietly. Lucen screamed behind his gag. The Empress's expression remained unreadable. "And why?" "Because he knew better," Cassia said. "Because small betrayals grow." She added, voice steadier now, "Because mercy means nothing if it weakens you." The Empress stepped closer, her face inches from Cassia's. "And because you want my approval?" Cassia held her gaze. "Yes." A long silence. Then the Empress lifted Cassia's chin with a single finger. "Good." Relief flooded Cassia, so suddenly her knees almost buckled. "You will not harm him," the Empress said. "I will." Cassia blinked. "But you said—" "I said you decide the fate, not that you carry it out." She brushed a strand of hair from Cassia's cheek. "I don't want your hands stained yet, only your mind." Her smile deepened. "And tonight, Cassia, your mind pleased me." The prisoner sobbed as the Empress turned to him, but she didn't touch him. Not yet. Instead, she looked at Cassia and said, "You may go. I want you to think about what you chose. And tomorrow, you will face your next test." Cassia hesitated. "What will happen to him?" The Empress's eyes glittered. "Whatever serves a lesson." Cassia bowed her head and stepped back. The door closed behind her, and as she walked down the lantern-lit corridor alone, she realized something terrifying. She didn't feel sick. She didn't feel guilty. She felt powerful. The Empress had made her choose, and in choosing, Cassia had crossed a line she could never uncross. Whatever came next, she was already becoming part of it, part of her. Cassia woke with a taste of iron in her mouth, though she had not bitten her tongue nor tasted blood. It was something else, something symbolic, psychological, because she knew the moment she opened her eyes that the Empress had begun reshaping her, not with blades, not with threats, but with something far more potent, choice. And the echo of last night's decision clung to her like a second skin. The palace felt different this morning, too quiet, too expectant. Servants moved to the corridors like shadows fleeing from their own footsteps. Whispers died whenever Cassia passed, but not out of cruelty or mockery, out of recognition. People had seen her follow the Empress into the lower halls. They had seen her emerge hours later alone. Some drew back, some bowed deeper, and some, Cassia noticed, watched her with a wary respect reserved for predators being born. When she reached the Empress's private audience chamber, the guard stepped aside without a word. The doors opened. Light spilled onto the marble floor, like poured gold. The Empress sat alone inside, draped in a gown of pale silver that shimmered with every subtle breath she took. Her posture was flawless, her expression unreadable. Cassia knelt. "Rise," the Empress said. Her voice was smooth, but carried a faint edge Cassia had never heard before, an unspoken question. Cassia obeyed. The Empress studied her for a long, lingering moment. "I gave you a difficult task last night," she said. "Did you sleep?" Cassia answered honestly. "Barely." "Good," the Empress replied, though her tone made it unclear whether she was pleased or merely acknowledging reality. "The decisions worth making should haunt you. They should press on your ribs and whisper through your bones. That is how leaders are forged." Cassia bowed her head. "What is my task today?" The Empress stood and moved toward a tall double door behind her throne. One Cassia had never seen open. She rested her hand on it. "Before I give you the next task," she said softly, "you must understand something essential to ruling." Cassia waited. "The empire is not held together by the army," the Empress said, "nor by wealth, nor even by fear." She glanced over her shoulder. "It is held together by ritual. Ritual older than this palace, older than my dynasty, older than the throne itself." Cassia felt a faint tremor run through her. "What kind of ritual?" she asked. The Empress smiled faintly. "One we have not performed in 3 years. One that requires an heir to witness." Cassia blinked. "An heir, your radiance?" "You," the Empress said simply, "may one day take command of what I guard. You have already taken your first step." She placed her palm flat against the door. "But before you inherit the power to judge others, you must witness the ritual that judges you." Cassia's pulse quickened. "Why me?" "Because I have chosen you," the Empress answered, "and because those I choose rarely disappoint me twice." The words were calm, but the warning behind them hummed like a blade. The Empress pushed the doors open. A rush of cool air poured out. Inside lay a descending staircase lit only by small bowls of oil fire. They flickered like captive spirits. Cassia followed the Empress into the darkness. The descent felt endless, each step echoing through narrow stone walls. Finally, they reached a cavernous space, vast, circular, carved into the earth itself. Torches lined the walls in a perfect ring, illuminating the center where a raised stone platform stood. Cassia stopped in place, because upon that platform, bound, kneeling, head lowered, was Lucen, alive, barely. His face was pale. His lips trembled. But he lived. Cassia's breath caught. "You spared him," she whispered. The Empress glanced at her. "No, you spared him. The moment you made your decision, he became yours to shape." Cassia felt confusion twist inside her. "I don't understand." "You will," the Empress said. "Tonight, during the ritual," she walked to the platform with effortless grace. Cassia followed, though every step felt heavier than the last. "Listen," the Empress said, her voice calm. "Do you know why you are here?" The boy nodded weakly. "To pay for what I did." "No," the Empress corrected gently. "You are here to reveal the truth about someone else." Lucen blinked, confused and terrified. Cassia stiffened. "About who?" The Empress turned to her. "You." Cassia felt her stomach drop. "Me?" "Loyalty tested in shadows is easy to fake," the Empress said. "But loyalty tested in ritual cannot be faked. You will be judged by what you do next. He will be judged by how he responds." Cassia's knees threatened to give way. "Your radiance—" "Hush," the Empress murmured. "This is not punishment. This is ascension." She gestured to a stone bowl placed beside Lucen. Inside was a thick, dark liquid, reflective, viscous, almost black. Cassia stared. "What is that?" "The ink of truth," the Empress said, "made from crushed charcoal, oils, and a herb that reveals fear." She held out a slender brush. Cassia did not take it. The Empress lifted her brow. "If you wish to rise, you must take it." Cassia's hand trembled as she accepted the brush. "What will I do?" she whispered. "You," the Empress said softly, "will ask him a single question, and he must answer in the presence of the ink. If he lies, the ink will reveal it. If he tells the truth, it will reveal that as well. Casha's breath shook. And what then? The Empress leaned close enough that Casha felt her breath on her ear. Then, she whispered, you'll understand exactly why I rule the way I do. Casha approached Lussen. His eyes were wide, pleading, trusting her more than the Empress. A mistake. She dipped the brush into the ink. It dripped like liquid shadow. She raised her voice. Lussen, her heart pounded. Last night, did you hate me for choosing punishment? A hush fell so deep Casha heard her own breath echo. Lussen swallowed, shaking. His lips trembled. Then, I didn't hate you, he whispered. I feared you. Casha touched the brush to the platform stone. The ink sizzled, burned, then spread in a ring of shimmering silver threads. Truth. The Empress smiled. Good, she murmured. The ritual accepts both of you. Casha exhaled in relief, but the Empress gently touched her arm, stopping her. That, she said, was only the first half. Casha turned. The second, she whispered. The Empress's eyes darkened with something ancient and commanding. Now, she said, he will question you. Casha's blood ran cold. Lussen's eyes widened in disbelief, and the torches around them burned brighter, as though hungry for what would come next. Casha thought she understood fear, but nothing compared to the moment the Empress stepped back, leaving her alone on the stone platform with Lussen, who trembled as though the air itself would shatter him, because for the first time since entering the Empress's world, Casha realized she was no longer being shaped by her, she was being measured, and in that cavern of firelight and stone, the truth was no longer something she could hide behind obedience. The bowl of truth ink still shimmered at her feet, its iridescent silver threads pulsing like a living heartbeat. Lussen stared at her, confused, terrified, betrayed. Yet something in his expression shifted as he understood what was being demanded of him. You want me to question her? He whispered. The Empress folded her hands behind her back. Yes, but your radiance, I'm only a servant. You are a voice of fear, the Empress interrupted. And fear always tells the truth when cornered. Casha's pulse quickened. Ask her, the Empress said. Lussen swallowed hard. His lips trembled before he forced the words out. Casha? He took a breath. When you chose to punish me, did you enjoy it? The question hit Casha like a blow. Her first instinct was denial. Her second was anger. Her third, the one she didn't want to face, was a quiet memory of the power she felt leaving that room last night. She dipped the brush into the ink. Her hand trembled. Her voice cracked. Didn't enjoy hurting you. She touched the brush to the stone. The ink curled into a jagged, chaotic shape. Not silver, not pure, but a fractured, violent swirl. The Empress tilted her head. Look. Casha felt the floor tilt under her feet. It's not truth. It is half of one, the Empress said, but half-truths are lies dressed in courtesy. Lussen's gaze stabbed into her. The Empress stepped in front of Casha, her shadow falling over the ink. Speak again and speak fully. Casha breathed in sharply. She couldn't lie. The ink would expose it. The Empress would feel it. So she closed her eyes and admitted what she'd never allowed herself to think aloud. I didn't enjoy hurting you, she whispered, but I enjoyed being chosen, being trusted, being powerful. She touched the brush to the stone again. This time the ink flared into brilliant silver, spreading like frost across the platform. Truth. Lussen's breath broke. Casha didn't know if he was more terrified of her or for her. The Empress watched it settle. Then she whispered, That is the answer I was waiting for. Casha exhaled shakily. Shame and relief battled inside her. Lussen wasn't finished. Casha, he whispered again, voice thin as thread. Do you fear her? Casha didn't look at the Empress. She dipped the brush into the ink. Yes, she said. Every moment. Silver bloomed instantly. Lussen's lip quivered. Then why do you follow her? Casha hesitated. This one pierced deeper, past surface fear, past loyalty. Why did she follow the Empress? The garden, the workshop, the tests, the ritual, the power she'd felt, the way the Empress had looked at her. not as another servant, but as a reflection she had chosen to polish. Cash's voice came out raw. Because, she said, I want to be more than who I was. And she offers that. The ink shone bright. Lucen whispered, even if it destroys you? Cassia closed her eyes. She had known the answer all along. Yes. The ink surged, silver fire racing outward in an expanding ring until it touched the outer circle of torches. Every flame roared upward in response. The Empress stepped into the light. Enough. Lucen fell silent instantly. The Empress approached Cassia slowly. The kind of slow that meant inevitability, not hesitation. You have answered with truth, she said. And in doing so, you have stepped beyond the place where most break. Cassia bowed her head. I only did what you commanded. No, the Empress said, taking Cassia's chin in her hand. You did what you are. Cassia met her eyes. There was no malice there, no cruelty, only calculation and something close to pride. I chose you, the Empress whispered, because you do not flinch from darkness. You examine it, you measure it, and that is the rarest quality of all. Cassia swallowed. What happens now? The Empress released her and turned toward Lucen. He has fulfilled his part. Cassia stiffened. Will he be punished? The Empress paused. Then she said calmly, No. Cassia blinked. No. Punishment is for disobedience. He obeyed. He told truth. He has repaid his debt. She looked at Lucen. You will be reassigned to the archives, somewhere quiet. Lucen's eyes filled with tears of pure disbelief. Go, the Empress said gently. He fled the room. Cassia turned to the Empress. Why spare him? The Empress smiled faintly. Because today was not his test. She stepped closer. Today was yours. Cassia felt her heart hammer again. And you passed. The Empress touched her shoulder. Come with me, she whispered. You have proven you can face your own truth. Now you will learn how to shape others with it. Cassia followed her up the staircase, leaving the torches and silver-stained stone behind. The cavern sealed itself in silence. And as Cassia walked deeper into the Empress's shadow, closer than she had ever dared stand before, one realization consumed her. She had not been broken. She had not been spared. She had been claimed. And in the Empire's hidden history, in the whispered accounts scholars later tried to erase, Cassia would be remembered not as a victim, but as the only woman the Empress allowed to learn her darkest secrets, and emerge not in ruin, but in power.